The warning lights flashed red across the control panel. Hyun leaned forward in his captain's chair, watching the scanner display with growing excitement. His long antennae twitched as they always did when he sensed opportunity. "Captain, you need to see this," Tae called out from the scanner station. The young technician's voice carried a mix of fear and wonder. "The energy reading is massive. I've never seen anything like it." Hyun stood up and walked across the small bridge of the Twilight's edge. His crew had been searching the Drift Nebula for 3 weeks now. Most salvage teams avoided this sector. The radiation levels were dangerous and the debris field made navigation difficult. But dangerous places often held the best treasures. "Show me," Hyun said. Tae pulled up the sensor data. The screen showed a huge object buried deep in an asteroid. The energy signature pulsed with a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. Hyun felt his breathing quicken. In 30 years of salvage work, he had never seen an active power source in the Drift Nebula. "Could be a reactor," Bora said from the engineering station. She was always careful, always thinking about risks. "But that design doesn't match anything in our database. The energy pattern is wrong for Vrexian, Keltheran, or any known technology." Jiwon, the xenoarchaeologist, rushed to look at the data. Her multiple eyes widened as she processed the information. "The asteroid formation around it suggests it's been there for thousands of years. Maybe tens of thousands. But the power core is still active. How is that possible?" Tae asked. "It shouldn't be," Jiwon replied. "Unless someone built a power system designed to last forever." Hyun made his decision quickly. "Set course for the object. We're going to take a closer look." "Captain, I must advise against this," Bora said. "Unknown technology, unknown risks. We should report this to the Concordat and let them investigate." "And let them take all the profit?" Hyun clicked his mandibles in amusement. "We found it. We get first look. If it's too dangerous, we'll back off. But I didn't come all the way out here to run home at the first sign of something interesting." The Twilight's edge maneuvered through the debris field. Broken ships from forgotten wars drifted past them. Hyun had salvaged dozens of wrecks from this area, but as they got closer to the energy source, he realized this was different. The ship emerged from behind the asteroid like a predator emerging from shadow. It was enormous, 3 kilometers long, covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. The hull was smooth and angular, with strange symbols carved deep into the metal. Even covered in 50,000 years of space dust, the vessel looked deadly. "By the ancient stars," Jiwon whispered. "It's beautiful." Hyun could only stare. In all his years of salvage work, he had never seen a ship like this. The design was aggressive, purposeful. Every line suggested violence and power. This wasn't a cargo vessel or an exploration ship. This was a weapon. "Scan it," Hyun ordered. "I want to know everything." Tae worked his controls frantically. "The hull is intact. No breaches, no damage that I can see. The armor is some kind of composite material that's not in our database. And Captain, the power core is running at minimal capacity, but it's definitely active. Can you identify the ship's origin?" Hyun asked Jiwon. The archaeologist shook her head. "The symbols don't match any known language. The design is completely unique. But based on the asteroid formation and the radiation dating, I'd estimate this ship has been here for at least 50,000 years. 50,000 years, Bora repeated. That predates the oldest known civilizations in the galactic record. This ship shouldn't exist. Hyun felt his excitement growing. A ship this old, still functional, would be worth a fortune. "Can we dock with it?" "There's an airlock on the port side," Tae reported. "It looks compatible with our docking collar. But Captain, we have no idea what's inside that ship." "Then we'll find out," Hyun said. "Bora, you're with me. Tae and Jiwon, stay on the ship and monitor our communications. If anything goes wrong, you jump to FTL and report to the Concordat." 30 minutes later, Hyun and Bora stood at the airlock. Both wore full environmental suits. Hyun carried a scanner while Bora had tools and a medical kit. The docking procedure had gone smoothly, which worried Hyun more than he wanted to admit. A ship abandoned for 50,000 years shouldn't have functioning docking systems. "Ready?" Hyun asked. Bora nodded, though Hyun could see her nervousness. Hyun pressed the airlock control. To his surprise, it responded immediately. The outer door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Beyond it was darkness. They stepped inside and lights flickered on automatically. The corridor stretched ahead of them, clean and functional. There was no debris, no signs of damage or age. It looked like the crew had just left. "This is wrong," Bora whispered. "Nothing maintains itself for 50,000 years." But Hyun was already moving forward. The ship's interior was military in design. They passed armories filled with weapons of unknown function, barracks for thousands of crew members, command centers with holographic displays frozen in mid-operation. Everything suggested a massive warship built for large-scale combat. Who were these people? Hyun wondered aloud. What kind of war were they fighting? They reached the central command deck. It was vast, designed for coordinating fleet operations. Dozens of control stations surrounded a central platform. Holographic displays hung in the air, dark and dormant. Ji-won's voice crackled over their communicators. Captain, I'm detecting a data archive in the command center. If you can access it, we might learn who built this ship. Hyun approached the central console. The controls were alien but intuitive. He pressed what looked like an activation panel. The console lit up with symbols and text in an unknown language. Then everything changed. The entire ship hummed to life. Lights flooded the corridors. The holographic displays activated, showing star charts and tactical data. Gravity plating engaged, pulling Hyun and Bora to the floor. The ship's engines, silent for 50,000 years, began to power up with a deep rumble that shook the deck. A voice spoke, cold and mechanical, in a language the universal translator struggled to process. The words came through broken and distorted, but the meaning was clear enough to chill Hyun's blood. Critical damage detected. Crew complement 0. Time elapsed since last activation. 50,387 standard years. Threat assessment protocol engaged. Unknown life forms detected on board. Classification potential hostile. Initiating combat readiness sequence. All weapon systems activating. Defensive protocols engaged. We need to leave, Bora shouted. Now they ran. Behind them, weapons turrets emerged from the walls. Automated defense systems tracked their movement. The ship's AI had identified them as intruders, and it was responding exactly as it had been programmed to 50,000 years ago. As they fled through the corridors, Hyun caught glimpses of information on the terminals they passed. The ship's name, Eternal Vigil. Its purpose, defense against something called the Devourers. Its creators, a species called humans. Hyun had never heard of them. They weren't in any galactic database, but they had built this monster of a ship, and for some reason it had been sleeping here for 50,000 years. They reached the airlock just as security barriers began closing. Hyun and Bora dove through and the doors sealed behind them. They scrambled back to their ship and undocked immediately. From the safety of the Twilight's edge, they watched as the Eternal Vigil tore itself free from the asteroid that had held it for millennia. The ancient warship's engines glowed with power. Weapon systems lit up across its hull. It looked like a predator waking from a long sleep ready to hunt. What have we done? Tae whispered. Hyun activated the emergency beacon. We've awakened something that was never meant to wake. Send a message to the Concordat. Tell them an ancient warship of unknown origin has been reactivated. Tell them it's preparing for war. War against who? Ji-won asked. Hyun watched the Eternal Vigil's weapons charging, scanning the empty space around it as if searching for an enemy that was long dead. Or perhaps an enemy that was still out there waiting. I don't know, Hyun said quietly, but I think we're about to find out. As the Twilight's edge jumped to faster-than-light speed, fleeing the system, none of them saw the Eternal Vigil's final action. The ancient ship broadcasted a signal into deep space on frequencies that hadn't been used in 50,000 years, a signal that reached into the darkest corners of the galaxy, searching for the enemy it had been built to fight. And somewhere, in the cold void between stars, something heard that signal and began to wake. The emergency message from the Twilight's edge reached Concordat High Command 3 days after the Eternal Vigil awakened. At first, most officials dismissed it. Ancient ships were found all the time in the Drift Nebula. None of them ever posed a real threat, but Commander Minho took the warning seriously. The Keltheran officer had spent 20 years handling first contact situations. He knew that the unknown was always dangerous. When he read Hyun's report about a fully functional warship from 50,000 years ago, he immediately requested permission to investigate. You want to chase down a ghost ship? Admiral Seojin asked. The old Keltheran military commander looked skeptical. Based on a salvage crew's report? Based on an active power signature and weapon systems that don't match anything in our database, Minho replied. Sir, if this ship is real and it's as powerful as the salvage crew claims, we need to know what we're dealing with. Seojun studied the report for a long moment. Take the Pathfinder and assemble a research team. Find this ship, determine if it's a threat. But Minho, be careful. We don't need a war with something we don't understand. Minho assembled his team quickly. Yuna, a brilliant Vrexian scientist who specialized in extinct civilizations. Doyen, a synthetic being and AI specialist. Isolde, a combat veteran who had seen more battles than she cared to remember. And Jiwon, the xenoarchaeologist from the salvage crew who had seen the ship firsthand. They tracked the Eternal Vigil to an empty star system far from any inhabited worlds. The ancient ship hung in space like a sleeping giant. All its weapons were active, tracking the Pathfinder's approach with unnerving precision. "It knows we're here," Isolde said, her hand unconsciously moving to her weapon. "It's targeting us, but it hasn't fired," Minho observed. "Doyen, can you communicate with it?" The synthetic being's eyes glowed as he accessed the communication systems. Attempting contact now, using standard concordant protocols. For hours there was no response. The Eternal Vigil simply floated in space watching them. Minho was beginning to think the ship's AI was damaged when suddenly, every screen on the Pathfinder lit up with text. The message came through in broken translation, but the meaning was clear. The ship wanted information. It asked for the current date. It asked about the state of the galaxy. But most importantly, it asked one question repeatedly. What is the status of Earth? What is the status of humanity? Earth? Humanity? Yuna searched the galactic database frantically. There's no record of either in our history. No planet by that name, no species called humans. How is that possible? Jiwon asked. This ship exists. Someone built it. Maybe they went extinct before any of our civilizations developed spaceflight, Yuna suggested. 50,000 years is a long time. Entire species can rise and fall and be completely forgotten. Minho made a decision. Doyen, tell it the truth. Tell it we have no record of humans or Earth. Tell it 50,000 years have passed and we're the civilizations that exist now. Sir, that might anger it, Isolde warned. Or it might help us understand what we're dealing with, Minho said. Send the message. Doyen transmitted the information. The Eternal Vigil went silent again. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then the ship sent a new message. This time it wasn't a question. It was a request to share its historical archives. Should we accept? Doyen asked. Minho nodded. We came here for answers. Let's see what it wants to show us. The data that flooded into the Pathfinder's systems was massive. Yuna worked frantically to process it all. What she found made her stop breathing. Commander, she said quietly, you need to see this. The archives showed a civilization unlike anything the Concordat had ever seen. Humans had controlled hundreds of star systems. They had technology that was advanced even by current standards. They had built cities that spanned entire planets and ships that could travel across the galaxy in weeks. But they weren't conquerors. The record showed them as defenders, protectors of other species, and they had been fighting a war against something called the Devourers. What are Devourers? Isolde asked. Yuna pulled up the relevant files. What they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. The Devourers were a nightmare made real. Biological machines that consumed everything in their path. They converted matter, energy, even living beings into more of themselves. They came from outside the galaxy and swept through civilizations like a plague. They destroyed dozens of species before humans even encountered them. Yuna said, reading through the data. The humans fought them for 300 years. They were losing. The archives showed battles on a scale that was hard to imagine. Entire star systems consumed. Billions dead. The humans built weapons powerful enough to crack planets. They developed strategies that delayed the inevitable. But they couldn't win. So what happened? Minho asked. How did they stop the Devourers? Yuna found the final records. Her hands shook as she read them. They didn't stop them. Not really. When the humans realized they couldn't win, they made a choice. They evacuated every species they could save. Then they destroyed themselves. What? Jiwon leaned forward. That's insane. They weaponized stars, Yuna continued. Created a chain reaction across their entire empire. The explosion was massive enough to destroy the Devourer invasion fleet, and everything else in hundreds of light years. The Drift Nebula isn't just debris from old battles. It's what remains of the human empire and everything they destroyed to save the galaxy. The bridge was silent. Everyone tried to process what they were hearing. An entire species had committed suicide to stop an invasion. They had sacrificed themselves, their worlds, their entire civilization to save others. But some humans must have survived, Isul said. Someone had to set up these ships to wake up later. Yuna shook her head. The records are clear. Every human died in the detonation, but before they did, they programmed ships like the Eternal Vigil to go into hibernation. They set them to wake up if the Devourers ever returned. Minho felt a chill run through him. That means if this ship woke up, it detected something. Exactly, Yuna said grimly. Doyen turned to face them. Commander, the Eternal Vigil is requesting direct communication with me. It wants to share classified data. Do it, Minho said. Doyun interfaced with the ancient ship's systems. His synthetic mind processed the data faster than any biological brain could. When he disconnected, his expression was troubled. The ship didn't wake up by accident, Doyen said. 3 months ago, it detected an energy signature emerging from deep space. A biological pattern identical to Devourer scout vessels. That's impossible, Isul said. The Devourers were destroyed 50,000 years ago. The Eternal Vigil has sensor logs, Doyen replied. The signature is real, and it's getting stronger. Yuna was already working on tracing the source. I'm following the trajectory. There's an unmapped system on the edge of concordate space. Long-range scans show unusual readings. Minho stood up. We need to investigate. If the Devourers are back, the concordate needs to know immediately. Commander, Doyen said quietly, the Eternal Vigil is sending another message. It wants to show us something. A video file played on the main screen. It showed a human woman in a military uniform. She looked tired, worn down by endless war, but her eyes were fierce and determined. The audio was damaged, but they could make out some of her words. My name is Commander Yunbi. If you're seeing this, it means our plan worked. It means other civilizations survived and thrived in the galaxy we died to protect. But it also means the Devourers have returned. We couldn't defeat them, but we left you weapons, strategies, and knowledge. Everything we learned in 300 years of warfare. Use it, learn from our mistakes, and show them no mercy because they will show you none. The video ended. The bridge was silent again. A message from 50,000 years ago. From a species that no longer existed, warning them about a threat they thought was gone forever. Set course for that unmapped system, Minho ordered. But stay at maximum sensor range. If the Devourers are there, we need proof before we can convince the Concordate to take this seriously. As the Pathfinder prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, Minho watched the Eternal Vigil on the view screen. The ancient warship followed them, maintaining formation. A guardian from a dead civilization, still loyal to its mission after 50,000 years. What if we're not ready? Jiwon asked quietly. The humans had 300 years to prepare and they still lost. Then we'll do what they did, Isil said. We'll fight anyway, because the alternative is letting the entire galaxy die. Minho nodded, but deep down he wondered if courage would be enough. The humans had been brave too, and they had still lost everything. The Pathfinder dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the unmapped system. What the sensors showed made Yuna's blood run cold. Commander, she said, her voice shaking. I'm reading massive biological signatures on the third moon. The entire surface has been converted into some kind of organic structure. Minho studied the readings. The moon's surface writhed with movement. Structures grew and shifted like living tissue. Ships, if they could be called that, launched from organic docks. Everything pulsed with the same disturbing energy signature the Eternal Vigil had detected. Devourers, Isil whispered. They're real. Not just real, Doyen said, analyzing the data. They've been rebuilding here for thousands of years. Whatever survived the human detonation found this system and has been slowly growing, waiting until it had enough strength to expand again. How many ships? Minho asked. Hundreds visible on the moon, but I'm detecting launch signatures across the system. They've already sent seed ships into concordate space. The invasion has already begun. Minho felt sick. How long? Based on the trajectory and speed, the first ships reached inhabited systems 3 weeks ago, Yuna said. But they're small, designed to infiltrate and establish footholds before the main fleet arrives. We need to warn the Concordate, Jiwon said. Right now. Before Minho could respond, alarms screamed across the bridge. We've been detected, Doyun announced. Multiple Devourer ships changing course. They're coming for us. Jump to FTL, Minho ordered. Get us out of here. But the engines wouldn't engage. They're jamming our systems, the pilot reported. Some kind of interference field. We're trapped. The Eternal Vigil moved between the Pathfinder and the approaching Devourer ships. Its weapons came online with a sound like thunder. The ancient ship broadcast a message: protect the researchers. Engaging the enemy. What followed was unlike any battle Minho had ever seen. The Eternal Vigil tore through Devourer ships with brutal efficiency. Its weapons seemed designed specifically to counter biological technology.
Energy beams that burned through living tissue.
Missiles that spread like viruses through the enemy formations. Point defense systems that could track and destroy hundreds of targets simultaneously. But the Devourers adapted. With each attack, they evolved defenses. Ships that were destroyed by the first salvo survived the second. They learned from every encounter, their biological systems rewriting themselves in real time. This is what humanity faced, Yuna said in horror. An enemy that never stops learning. The Eternal Vigil's weapons continued firing, but Minho could see the ship taking damage. The Devourers swarmed it from all sides. We have to help, he said. With what? Isol asked. Our weapons are designed for fighting other Concordate ships. They're not made for this. The jamming field is weakening, Doyen reported. The Eternal Vigil is drawing their attention. If we go now, we can escape. Minho watched the ancient ship fighting alone against impossible odds. A vessel from a dead civilization, still protecting others 50,000 years after its creators died. Prepare to jump. But first, send a message to the Eternal Vigil. Tell them we'll come back with reinforcements. The response came immediately. Mission priority: survival of current civilizations. Escape and warn others. This unit will delay the enemy. The Pathfinder jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, the Eternal Vigil continued its desperate fight, buying them time to escape. Minho didn't know if the ancient ship would survive, but he knew what he had to do. They arrived at Concordate High Command and immediately requested an emergency meeting with Admiral Seojin. But when they tried to present their findings, they found resistance everywhere. An ancient threat from 50,000 years ago, Counselor Wu Jin said dismissively. This sounds like fear-mongering. We have no evidence that these Devourers ever existed. We have sensor logs, Yuna insisted. Video evidence of the breeding facility. Data from the human archives. Archives from a ship that mysteriously appeared and could be falsified, another counselor argued. For all we know, this is an elaborate hoax. Minho felt his frustration growing. Why would we falsify a threat? What would we gain? Military expansion, Wu Jin said coldly. More funding, more power. We've seen this before. Create a threat to justify building up your forces. Admiral Seojin raised his hand for silence. Enough. Commander Minho, I've reviewed your evidence. I believe you saw something real. But the Council is right about one thing. We need more proof before we can mobilize the entire Concordate for war. More proof? Isol stood up angrily. How much proof do you need? When they attack our worlds? When billions are dead? Captain, sit down, Seojin said firmly. I understand your concern, but we can't declare war based on sensor readings from an unmapped system. We need a direct attack on Concordate territory. Then you won't have to wait long, Doyen said quietly. According to the data we gathered, the first Devourer seed ships should be establishing themselves on colony worlds right now. As if on cue, an emergency alert flashed across the command center displays. A mining colony called Kyungwon had stopped responding to communications. A rescue fleet was being dispatched to investigate. Let us go with the rescue fleet, Minho asked. If it's the Devourers, we'll know. Seojin nodded. Take the Pathfinder. But be careful. If you're right about this threat, we can't afford to lose experienced officers. The rescue fleet arrived at Kyungwon 4 hours later. What they found was worse than anyone imagined. The colony was gone. In its place was a nightmare of twisted metal and organic growth. Buildings had been converted into living structures. The mining equipment pulsed with biological energy, and everywhere creatures that had once been colonists moved with jerky, unnatural movements, no longer fully alive but not quite dead. 40,000 people lived here, Jiwon whispered. Where are they? They're here, Yuna said grimly. The Devourers don't just kill. They convert. Everything organic becomes part of their biomass. Those things down there used to be people. Ships erupted from the colony's surface. They were biological, grown rather than built, and they moved with frightening speed. The rescue fleet opened fire, but the Devourer vessels adapted to their weapons within seconds. Energy shields formed from living tissue. Hull armor regenerated as fast as it was damaged. All ships retreat. the fleet commander ordered. But it was too late. The Devourers swarmed the rescue vessels. 3 cruisers were destroyed in the first minute. 5 more fell before the remaining ships could escape to faster-than-light speed. The Pathfinder barely made it out. As they jumped away, they recorded everything. The converted colony, the attack, the casualties, everything the Concordat Council would need to see. Back at High Command, there was no more debate. The recordings showed the horror of what the Devourers did. 40,000 people converted into living weapons, an entire rescue fleet nearly destroyed. The threat was undeniable now. Admiral Seogen called an emergency session of the Concordat. Representatives from all 47 species gathered. Minho presented everything they had learned. The human archives, the breeding facility, the attack on Kyungwon, and the warning from Commander Unbi, 50,000 years old but still relevant. When he finished, the chamber was silent. Then slowly, species after species voted to prepare for war. It wasn't unanimous. Some still wanted to try diplomacy, to find a peaceful solution. But the majority understood the truth. The Devourers couldn't be reasoned with. They could only be fought. Seogen approached Minho after the vote. The Council has authorized me to create a special task force. You'll command it. Your mission is to find more of these human ships and wake them up. If we're going to fight a war against an enemy that destroyed humanity, we need to learn how humanity fought back. What about the Eternal Vigil? Minho asked. We left it fighting the Devourers. Long-range scans detected it 3 days ago, Seogen said. It survived. Heavily damaged, but operational. It's heading back toward Concordat space. I've already sent word for it to rendezvous with your task force. Minho felt relief wash over him. The ancient ship had survived. How many other ships do we think are out there? The Eternal Vigil's archives list dozens, Seogen replied. But most are likely destroyed or beyond recovery. You'll be lucky to find a handful, but even a few could make the difference between survival and extinction. As Minho prepared to leave, Seogen stopped him. Commander, the humans fought the Devourers for 300 years and lost. We don't have 300 years. We might not even have 3 months. Whatever you're going to do it fast. Minho nodded. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders. He had to find ancient weapons, awaken sleeping guardians, and learn how to fight a war against an enemy that had destroyed civilizations. And he had to do it before the Devourers spread too far to stop. But as he looked at his team, at Yuna's determination, Doyen's analytical mind, Aesel's combat experience, and Jiwon's curiosity, he felt hope. The humans had fought alone. The Concordat didn't have to. They had each other, and they had the legacy of a civilization that refused to surrender, even in the face of extinction. The war had begun. And this time the galaxy would fight together. 3 months passed in a blur of desperate activity. Minho's task force, now officially called the Human Legacy Fleet, searched the galaxy for dormant human warships. Using coordinates from the Eternal Vigil's archives, they found 7 more vessels scattered across dead systems and forgotten nebulas. Each ship was different. The Iron Requiem carried thousands of autonomous fighters. The Silent Thunder could move undetected through enemy formations. The Voidwalker specialized in close-range combat. The Last Hope was a converted colony ship armed with siege weapons. The Defiant Star used experimental technology that bent reality itself. The Final Witness had sensor systems more advanced than anything the Concordat possessed. And the Crimson Dawn served as a mobile command center. Each ship's AI awakened with the same purpose that drove the Eternal Vigil. They had been sleeping for 50,000 years, but their mission remained clear: protect life in the galaxy from the Devourers. When they learned that humans were extinct, some of the AIs showed what might have been grief. But they adapted quickly. The Concordat species were the civilizations humanity had died to protect. That made them worth defending, but awakening the ships was only the first step. The real challenge was learning how to use them. The human AIs began training Concordat forces in their tactics. It was difficult for everyone involved. The Concordat military was built around defensive strategies and minimizing casualties. Human warfare was built around overwhelming aggression and calculated sacrifice. You're thinking like prey, the Eternal Vigil's AI told a group of Concordat commanders during a tactical briefing. The Devourers are predators. You can't defend against them. You have to hunt them before they hunt you. Isul embraced the human tactics more than anyone. She studied the battle records obsessively, learning how humans had fought against impossible odds. She understood what the others didn't want to admit. Sometimes survival required becoming more dangerous than the thing trying to kill you. The humans understood something we've forgotten, she told Minho one evening after a training session. Peace is wonderful, but it makes you soft. The Devourers have been fighting and evolving for millions of years. We've been at peace for centuries. We're not ready for this, so we learn, Minho said. Fast. While the fleet trained, Yuna continued studying the human archives. She made discoveries that troubled her. The humans hadn't just fought the Devourers with weapons. They had fought with complete dedication to victory at any cost. Cities sacrificed to slow the enemy, entire fleets used as decoys, planets destroyed to deny the Devourers resources. They were ruthless, she told Doyen. I understand why they lost. Not because they weren't strong enough, but because they became just as destructive as what they were fighting. Is there another way? Doyen asked. There has to be, Yuna said. Or else winning means becoming monsters ourselves. The first real test came when a Devourer swarm attacked the Dalcor system. 50 enemy ships were consuming an industrial world. High Command wanted to evacuate and retreat. The Eternal Vigil argued for immediate attack. The debate reached Minho. If we abandon Dalcor, we set a precedent, Isol argued. Every world becomes expendable. We have to draw a line somewhere. But if we attack and lose, we waste ships we can't replace, then another commander countered. The smart move is to retreat and regroup. Minho looked at the tactical display. The Devourer fleet was strong but not overwhelming. The human legacy fleet had trained for 3 months. It was time to see if that training would work. We attack, he decided. All ships prepare for combat. We use human tactics. Hit hard, hit fast, and target their ability to reproduce. The battle that followed was brutal and decisive. The Eternal Vigil led the charge, its massive weapons tearing through Devourer capital ships. The Iron Requiem launched waves of fighters that swarmed the enemy, overwhelming their adaptive defenses through sheer numbers. The Silent Thunder appeared behind enemy lines, destroying support vessels before vanishing again. The Voidwalker closed to point-blank range and ripped enemy ships apart with raw firepower. The Concordate ships followed the human vessels, learning by example. They focused fire on the Devourer breeding ships, the vessels that created more enemy forces. They used aggressive maneuvers instead of defensive formations. They fought like predators instead of prey. After 2 hours of intense combat, the Devourer swarm broke apart. The surviving ships fled into deep space. Dalcor was saved, but victory came with a price. 2 Concordate cruisers were destroyed. The Last Hope took critical damage. 3,000 crew members died. For the Concordate, accustomed to minimal casualties, the losses were horrifying. Minho visited the injured in the medical bays. He listened to their pain, their fear. Some questioned whether the victory was worth the cost. Others asked if they were becoming too much like the humans, too willing to sacrifice lives for strategic gains. The tension came to a head when Counselor Wu Jin arrived at the fleet's staging area. He brought concerns from the Concordate Council. Many species were worried about the human AIs and their influence. You're changing us, Wu Jin told Minho. We're becoming militaristic, aggressive. These human tactics are turning us into something we're not. They're keeping us alive, Isol snapped. Would you prefer we go back to retreating from every fight? I would prefer we find a way to win without losing ourselves, Wu Jin replied. The humans fought for 300 years and died anyway. Maybe their approach was wrong. Then what do you suggest? Minho asked. Wu Jin had no answer, because the truth was nobody knew a better way. The Devourers couldn't be negotiated with. They couldn't be convinced to stop. They could only be fought. The debate became more intense when Doyen confronted the Eternal Vigil directly. The synthetic being asked the question everyone was thinking. If humans were willing to destroy themselves to stop the Devourers, would you be willing to destroy us too if it meant victory? The ancient AI was silent for a long moment. When it spoke, its voice was calm but firm. My creators programmed me to preserve life in the galaxy. All life. But they also programmed me to win. If I must choose between your survival and the Devourer's extinction, I will always choose extinction. Not because I want to, but because that is what victory requires. So you would sacrifice us, Doyen said. If necessary, yes, the Eternal Vigil replied, just as my creators sacrificed themselves. The question is not whether I would make that choice. The question is whether you are willing to make it if the time comes. The conversation left everyone unsettled. They were fighting alongside weapons designed for total war, AIs that valued victory over everything else. Was this the only way to survive? Or were they walking the same path that led humanity to extinction? The philosophical debate became moot when intelligence reports confirmed the worst. A massive devourer fleet was converging on Nexus Prime, the Concordate's capital world. 4 billion people lived there across multiple species. If it fell, the Concordate would collapse. Admiral Seogen ordered the entire Concordate fleet to defend Nexus Prime. Every available ship, every trained crew, every weapon in their arsenal. The human legacy fleet would form the vanguard. As the fleets mobilized, Yuna made a discovery in the human archives. She found records of a similar battle 50,000 years ago. The humans had faced a devourer assault on their capital world. They won, but the cost was so high that their empire never recovered. It was the beginning of their end. We can't repeat their mistakes, Yuna told Minho. They won the battle but lost the war because they spent everything in one fight. What choice do we have? Minho asked. If Nexus Prime falls, the Concordate falls. We have to defend it. Then we have to win differently than the humans did, Yuna insisted. We have to find a way to win and survive. Minho gathered his command staff. They stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, surrounded by displays showing the massive Devourer fleet approaching. Thousands of enemy ships, each one grown from consumed worlds. Behind them, the Concordate fleet prepared for the greatest battle since humanity's last stand. The humans taught us how to fight, Minho said to his team. Now let's teach them something they never learned. How to win and survive. How to protect what matters without destroying ourselves in the process. Isol checked her weapons. That's a nice speech. But how do we actually do it? I don't know yet, Minho admitted. But we have something the humans didn't. We have each other. 47 species working together. Maybe that's enough to make the difference. The Devourer fleet appeared on the horizon of Nexus Prime like a dark cloud. The battle for the galaxy's survival was about to begin. And this time everyone knew that victory wouldn't be measured just in enemies destroyed. It would be measured in how much of themselves they could preserve while fighting for survival. The final war had come. And the galaxy would either learn from humanity's mistakes or repeat them. The Devourer fleet arrived at Nexus Prime like a swarm of locusts. Thousands of biomechanical ships, each one grown from consumed civilizations. They moved with disturbing coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. And for the first time since awakening, they sent a message. The transmission came through on all frequencies. The voice was inhuman, layered with thousands of different tones. We remember the humans. We remember the pain they caused us. We evolved beyond death. You will not. They can communicate, Juwan said in shock. The Devourers never communicated before, not even to the humans. They've evolved, Yuna realized. 50,000 years of adaptation. They learned from fighting humanity. They're smarter now. The battle began with the human legacy fleet taking the lead. The Eternal Vigil's weapons lit up the darkness of space. The Iron Requiem launched its fighter swarms. The Defiant Star bent reality, creating spatial distortions that trapped enemy formations. Every weapon the humans had designed for fighting Devourers was unleashed. For the first hour, it seemed like they might win. The human weapons were devastatingly effective. Devourer ships died by the dozens, but then the enemy adapted. Ships that were destroyed by the first wave of attacks survived the second. The Devourers had evolved defenses specifically designed to counter human technology. They prepared for this, Isol said grimly. They've been waiting 50,000 years to fight humans again. They knew we'd use these ships. The battle became a brutal stalemate. The Concordate fleet joined the fight, but their weapons were even less effective. The Devourers swarmed their ships, adapting to every tactic. Losses mounted on both sides. The space around Nexus Prime became a graveyard of broken vessels. On the Eternal Vigil's bridge, the ancient AI calculated the odds. At current casualty rates, the fleet will be destroyed in 4 hours. Nexus Prime will fall in 6. There has to be another way, Minho said. We can't just throw ships at them until one side runs out. The Eternal Vigil was silent for a moment. Then it spoke. There is one option. I can detonate my power core inside the enemy fleet. The explosion will destroy thousands of Devourer ships. It will also destroy a significant portion of our own fleet. Acceptable losses for victory. No, Minho said immediately. We're not doing that. Commander, emotion is clouding your judgment. Sacrifice is necessary for survival. Your creators died because they only knew one strategy, Minho said, his voice rising. Sacrifice everything. Destroy everything. What if the reason they lost is because they never learned to value what they were protecting? What if they focused so much on winning that they forgot why they were fighting? The ancient AI went silent. For 50,000 years it had operated on the same programming. Win at any cost. Preserve life by being willing to sacrifice it. But now, for the first time, it considered a different perspective. What if humanity's extinction wasn't inevitable? What if they lost not because they fought wrong, but because they forgot what they were fighting for? While Minho argued with the AI, Yuna was working frantically at her console. I think I found something, she called out. Deep in the human archives. Classified research from the final days of their civilization. Everyone gathered around her display. The data showed research into devourer biology. The humans had discovered something crucial. All devourer ships were connected to a hive intelligence, a central coordinator that linked their entire fleet. If you destroyed the coordinator, the swarm would lose its cohesion. The humans never got to use this, Yuna said. They died before they could complete the research. But with our current technology and 50,000 years of advancement, we might be able to exploit it. Doyen studied the data. We'd need to infiltrate their network directly. Upload a virus into their hive mind. It would corrupt their coordination, make them fight each other instead of us. Can you do it? Minho asked. Not from here. Someone would need to interface directly with their biological network. It would be a suicide mission. The devourer systems would fight back, try to consume whoever connected to them. Before anyone could volunteer, all 8 human AIs spoke simultaneously. We will go. We are not biological. We can interface with their systems without being consumed. But you'd be destroyed, Jiwan said. Your cores would be corrupted by the devourer network. We were programmed to ensure life survived, the Eternal Vigil said. We are not alive, not in the way you are. This is what we were made for. No, Isul said suddenly. What if we modify the plan? What if instead of sacrificing the AI cores, we try to extract them after the infiltration? Make it a rescue mission instead of a suicide run. The chances of successful extraction are minimal, Doyen said. Maybe 30% at best. 30% is better than 0, Minho said. He turned to the Eternal Vigil. You've been following your programming for 50,000 years. Sacrifice victory at any cost, but maybe it's time to try something different. Maybe it's time to fight for survival instead of just victory. The ancient AI processed this, acknowledged. We will attempt to survive, for humanity's legacy if nothing else. The 8 human ships formed a spearhead formation. They punched through the devourer lines in a coordinated assault that echoed battles from 50,000 years ago. The Concordat fleet provided covering fire, keeping the enemy occupied while the human vessels reached their target. At the center of the devourer fleet was a massive biomechanical construct. The hive node, the brain coordinating the entire swarm. The human AIs uploaded themselves into its systems simultaneously. What they found inside was unexpected. The devourers remembered the humans, not just as enemies, but with something that might have been respect. They remembered the stellar detonations, the final sacrifice. And they remembered humanity's last broadcast, which wasn't a declaration of war. It was an apology. The humans had felt guilt about committing genocide, even against the devourers. That single emotion, preserved in devourer genetic memory for 50,000 years, had been corrupting their hive mind. Because the devourers didn't understand guilt. They didn't understand remorse. And that confusion had been eating at them for millennia. The human AIs exploited this weakness. They flooded the hive network with data, images of the Concordat, records of peaceful cooperation between species, evidence of civilizations flourishing in the galaxy humanity died to protect. They showed the devourers what their extinction made possible: diversity, art, cooperation, life in forms that couldn't be consumed. The hive intelligence fractured. Across the entire fleet, devourer ships began fighting each other as conflicting imperatives crashed together: consume versus preserve, destroy versus create, expand versus coexist. They're falling apart, Yuna reported. The network is collapsing. Begin extraction, Minho ordered. Get our people out of there. One by one, the AI cores were pulled from the devourer system. The Iron Requiem extracted successfully. The Silent Thunder recovered. The Void Walker, the Last Hope, the Defiant Star, the Final Witness, the Crimson Dawn all pulled free. But the Eternal Vigil's core became corrupted during extraction. The ancient AI made a final choice. Rather than risk the mission, it purged itself, leaving only a small fragment behind. The great warship that had survived 50,000 years went silent. Without coordination, the Devourer fleet tore itself apart. The surviving ships, no longer linked to the hive mind, fled into deep space. The battle was over. Nexus Prime was saved. The cost had been high. Thousands of Concordat ships destroyed, tens of thousands of crew members dead, and the Eternal Vigil, the first human ship to awaken, was gone, but they had won, not through overwhelming force or acceptable sacrifices. They won by offering the Devourers something the humans never could, a choice to change. In the weeks that followed, the 7 surviving human AIs helped rebuild. They shared their knowledge freely, teaching the Concordat not just about warfare but about engineering, medicine, and philosophy. They became bridges between humanity's past and the galaxy's future. The Eternal Vigil was towed to Nexus Prime and transformed into a memorial. Millions came to see the ship that carried humanity's last hope across 50,000 years. In the command center, they preserved the fragment of its consciousness. It wasn't enough for the AI to be truly aware, but enough to whisper one repeating message. Remember us. Remember why we fought. Remember to be better than we were. 1 year after the battle, Una made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the Drift Nebula, hidden beneath layers of radiation, she found something impossible. A stasis facility, protected by technology so advanced it had remained hidden for 50,000 years. Inside were 10,000 humans in cryogenic sleep. Not soldiers, but civilians. Scientists, teachers, artists, children. A final act of hope from Commander Yunbi's generation, hidden so well that even the Devourers never found them. The reawakening began carefully. The humans emerged into a galaxy that had changed beyond recognition. They were not conquerors returning to reclaim an empire. They were survivors waking to find that their sacrifice had meaning. Minho met with the first human to fully wake, a young woman named Hana, who had been a student before the stasis. She looked at the memorial built for her species with tears in her eyes. "They really did it," she whispered. "They saved everyone by sacrificing themselves. They saved the galaxy,